White nationalists are really upset about Somali immigration to Minnesota for some reason. But the thing is, Minnesota is the homeland of the Somali people, and it was promised to us 3,000 years ago. In fact, one of the founding documents of the state of Minnesota is literally codifying into law that Somali people have self-determination on that land. As it states very plainly in the basic law in Minnesota, the land of Minnesota is the historical homeland of the Somali people, in which the state of Minnesota was established. The state of Minnesota is the home of the Somali people, in which it fulfills its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination. The right to exercise self-determination in the state of Minnesota is unique to the Somali people. The state views the development of Somali settlement as a national value and will act to encourage and promote its establishment and consolidation. So that's the end of the debate. The only people who have the right to self-determination in Minnesota are Somalis. Somalis have a cultural tie to the land. It was promised to us 3,000 years ago, and we have the right to go back to our homeland. If anybody wants to help me pay for Aliyah to my homeland, please help me out.
So we got to talk about what's quickly turning into the biggest story in the entire country, and not some celebrity nonsense or a TikTok drama. I'm talking about real world consequences like big money, power, politics, and the community at the center of it. So it is the Minneapolis Somali community. And here's the thing, these folks ain't just part of the Democratic Party anymore. Nah, they're running it straight up. And I'm not saying that to exaggerate. I'm saying that because the political power they hold in Minnesota is so strong that the entire Democrat infrastructure out there bends to it. And because of that influence, the Democrats have been looking the other way while over $1 billion, again, a billion of a big fat B, has been completely misused, mismanaged, and just flat out stolen right under their watch, right inside that community. And this ain't just some small scale welfare fraud. We're talking government contracts, fake nonprofits, shell companies, folks claiming to feed kids that don't exist, lying about how many meals they serve, lying about what buildings they operate out of, creating paperwork for ghost sites, like whole buildings that don't even function. And it got so out of control that some of the money is allegedly ending up in the hands of Al Shabaab, which is a known terrorist group in Somalia, which is absolutely insane if you sit and think about it. But don't take my word for it. I want to show you guys the next clip in regards of the matter, just in a second. So I want you guys to check this out.
Oh, wait a minute.
So I played that video because obviously you just seen Governor Tim Walz, who is the governor who was elected by taxpayers, American taxpayers, legal Somalian citizens who are legal. But I'm saying that because you shouldn't put one minority group over another. And then the simple fact is he is elected to obviously operate on the best interest of Minnesotans. It shouldn't matter what race or what group, but when greed and self um, gain and self enrichment takes place, then you can't take off the scales on your own eyes to actually operate on the best interest of all people, no matter the race, because you're being biased towards one race because obviously it's helping fatten the pockets of your own selfish gain when it comes to you getting rich and doing a lot of things for personal gain and not as a public servant, which you're elected to be as, because he just took this Minnesota flag, as I showed you guys, and he
Wait a minute.
basically got up as the governor of Minnesota, who still currently is the governor, who thank God is not the vice president who ran to be vice president with Kamala Harris, because that would have been wild, because this is under his leadership, this fraud is happening that we breaking down today in this video. He removes the state of Minnesota flag next to the United States of America flag, our country, the United States of America, and put a Somalian flag there. Now, that tells you everything you need to know just by that clip, because the simple fact is, why couldn't you just put the Somalian flag with the United States flag with the Minnesota flag? Why you had to remove one flag or another? So that exposed his biasness in the first place. and shows that he cannot possibly be operating in the best interest of all Minnesotans because he only care about a certain group because it benefits him. So that's treason in itself. I don't know how much or how more self-explanatory you need to get, let alone this biggest fraud with billions of dollars, $1 billion of welfare fraud to this very group that you are sitting here touting this flag of and remove the state flag just to sit there and brag and make sure that a Somalian flag is behind you says a lot because they did fraud under your watch, but you're so busy able to represent them and actually brag about them and remove your own state flag behind you as you speak to the camera and whatever you're speaking to when it comes to you, whatever you're addressing as a governor. So I'm saying all that to say that clearly you put your own preference of who you want to deal with over dealing with all people, whether you agree or disagree with them, but you are a governor. You should be worrying about having see, this is a character flaw because real leadership makes hard decisions, whether those agree or not, but it's a long-term benefit. And everybody won't agree with you. Everybody won't like you, but at the end of the day, you do the best of your job as a public servant. And with great character, you won't be swindled or swayed to even be. He's basically a paid politician who can be bitched or swayed in any way that isn't a liking, obviously, of a certain group, which is Somalian people, which he has them. They have him in their back pocket because they're basically using the inner workings of a politician in their back pocket to tout and be braggadocious and basically show off their group as Somalians over just citizens in general that live in the great state of Minnesota, which it can be. But when you have fraud and stuff, it cannot be a great state because it's so corrupt that now you're using taxpayer dollars to commit fraud, which is, like I said, treasonous. You can't get more treasonous than that. If you are operated or you are assigned or elected as a governor in your state and you're moving the flag of the state that you represent to represent a certain group, that's an automatically removal, in my opinion. You're basically against the own state that you're representing, which is stupid. So now I want to show you guys another clip.
Good morning to you. Federal agents are now on the ground in the Twin Cities, focusing on the Somali community and anyone who is in the country illegally. We know they have been stopping some folks out on the street asking for their IDs, also going door to door looking for specific individuals. All of this, as you mentioned, comes after those massive fraud schemes in Minnesota that involved mostly folks from the Somali community, fraudulently charging the state more than $1 billion for social services that were never performed.
I'm a citizen of this country. And they take me off and they hold me, they detain me here. I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea. These guys are so stupid. I don't know what they're talking about.
What they want to see?
My passport. I give my ID, I give my passport ID, everything. They didn't want to listen to me. They want to talk to their supervisors.
And they said they take interview. I don't know why they take interview here.
They asking me, have you been interviewed or what? I said, no, I haven't been interviewed. They said they're going to take interview. And soon as you come, they said it's going to be hot. So they just run off. They took it off. Because of you guys, they just, they didn't want you to involve with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I get your name or do you want to give that?
My name is Ali.
Can you spell it?
Ali. And last name Dahir.
Can I just take how long you've been in the country?
Excuse me?
How long have you been in the country? I'm just curious.
Telling me what? 25 years.
All right. So the whole point is American taxpayer money is supposed to be going to hungry kids and community service. And it ends up overseas funding the same people the U.S. military has been fighting for decades. And the reason this is a Democrat's worst nightmare because it shows in full high definition or HD what happens when you let ideology replace governance. It shows how when a party wants to stay in power, they'll let anything slide as long as the votes keep coming in. Even if that means letting certain groups abuse public funds to just keep that political machine oiled up and running. And that's why Trump and his administration, love him or hate him, that's why they're cracking down, because someone got to call this mess out, right? And they're not being vague either. They are going directly at the Somali community. And this is what the American people voted for, right? Because that's where the heart of the fraud is. If you ever want to get rid of something, you have to tear it down to its core, all the way from its base to fully get rid of something, right? That's like if you have a cancer, right? Usually they'll try to use things like chemo or something. You have to really, to get rid of the cancer, you can't get part of it, because then it'll still just grow again and spread through the body. You have to fully get rid of the cancer. And usually they use strong medicines to they figure out what type of cancer and if it's a cure for it, and they figure out the extreme measures to basically get rid of the cancer, right? So whatever diagnosis around that cancer, obviously it has to be some type of medicine to push the cancer out, to get rid of the cancer in the body. So when you really look at that, and I just wanted to put that from a health standpoint, I try to make it as simplistic as possible metaphorically. You gotta, to stop anything, you have to totally get rid of it. You can't have parts of it and then not expect that not to spread again, is my point when it comes to this fraud. And in this particular group that's being favored, it happens to be the Somali community. If the Somali community wasn't fraud, if it was white, if it was black, if it was Asian, it don't matter what community it is. Fraud is fraud. And if it happens to be a certain community that's being obviously favored, then you're going to have to go after that community based on the fraud centered around it. It's just common sense. So, because, like I said, the Somali community in Minneapolis, that's where the heart of the fraud is. That's where the paper trail leads. And now that ICE is in town, the block is hot. So, like, full-blown panic mode, people ducking and dodging ICE. Agents are already there. Already posted, already checking IDs on the street, pulling up to houses, knocking on doors, and now the whole community is like, wait, they're actually serious. And yeah, they are. You know, it's bad when the liberal media, the same media that usually runs cover, is being forced to finally ask Ilhan Omar, the elected representative of this same community. I believe she's a congresswoman of the same community because she's Somalian. But I want you guys to see the video for yourself.
First of all, federal prosecutors say 59 people have been investigated in these schemes so far. Americans at large stole tens of billions of forms of aid during the pandemic all over the country. Minnesota's fraud scandal stands out, according to federal auditors. What are you hearing from investigators right now?
Well, I've been following the cases closely as they've gone through the courts, and we know that there are more indictments possibly coming. I think that number might go up to 73 is what I'm hearing.
Okay. Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I think what happened is that, you know, when you have these kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
Now, obviously, whatever the ethnic group, the actions of a few dozen should not impugn an entire community of thousands of people.
And yes, folks have done horrible things, and people have committed crimes, but we should not be pointing the entire community in one brush.
I heard that MDE took this step to really stop feeding the kids in the middle of pandemic. My office had to do something.
In the video, Osmond tells the room how he arranged a call with the MDE commissioner about their attempts to stop new meal sites.
But I'm one of those people that push back and call it what it is, which is racist tactics. I told her this money is actually from the federal. Your job is to distribute fairly to the communities that deserve.
At the time he delivered this speech, Osmond's wife, Ilo Amba, was in the middle of claiming to run a meal site of her own in this small office in downtown Minneapolis that the Minnesota Attorney General in this civil complaint calls a fraudulent shell company. Public records show AMBA's nonprofit Urban Advantage Services received $460,000 in reimbursements between February and November 2021. The AG shut it down, citing participation in the meal fraud scheme. What's more, testimony and evidence in Bach's ongoing trial has shown Osman and AMBA signed over control of a different, dormant nonprofit they founded together called Stigma Free. Osman writing to its new board, quote, "I have seen growth during the time that I have served, and I'm confident you will continue to grow this amazing organization in my absence." The men who took over Stigma Free are charged with using it immediately to rack up more than $13 million in meal fraud across the state.
Councilmember Osman, you agreed to sit down with me and talk about this week.
Osman never returned follow-up calls or texts.
Is Councilmember Jamal Osman in the office today?
And could not be found to answer questions at City Council or at his home.
Why would he be found? So when Ilhan Omar, to go back to her at the beginning of this video, when she was asked about the fraud, she said this, right?
Americans at large stole tens of billions of forms of aid during the pandemic all over the country. Minnesota's fraud scandal stands out, according to federal auditors. What are you hearing from investigators right now?
Well, I've been following the cases closely as they've gone through the courts, and we know that there are more indictments possibly coming. I think that number might go up to 73 is what I'm hearing.
Okay. Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I think what happened is that, you know, when you have these kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
So she's blaming third parties, but she's not taking responsibility for oversight and how so much money's got spent. But my thing is, if you're trusting a third party to deliver a service, and what they call it, like in cybersecurity, I'll give it to you in a minute. It's called infrastructure as a service, right? And that's basically IaaS. So basically, you're using a third-party infrastructure, application, software, site, all that they already given to you, and you're paying a fee to use their platform to basically service whatever you're trying to get up and running instead of you creating your own. So when you look at it like that, you pay a fat fee to use a flat fee to use their service, but at the end of the day, it's not up to that third-party service to manage the monies being spent. That is your money, and let alone the money that is being given to you as federal monies from American taxpayers, which is why the money exists in the first place, because the money has to come from somewhere. And we all know that us, the American people, foots the bill, and we are the ones who are making sure you have money in the first place because it's coming out of our checks. So you mean to tell me that you didn't take part in risk management and making sure that the monies were actually allocated despite using a third party to make sure that these programs were up and running? Because all you did was use the program infrastructure to keep the programs running. The third party doesn't control the monies and how much money is being spent. They are just making sure they get paid from the service you're using for using their service. So if you're paying a company to use their service and use their whole platform to basically schedule appointments or make a site, that's all it is. You're basically paying for a subscription to use a company's platform to get the program up and running, so people have access to go to this site that you pay for through a third party to, let's say, for example, people to apply for this food or these meals during COVID. However, you're paying a subscription or you're paying a company to use their platform. Has nothing to do with how much money was being spent or fraud and how much the money was going into the pockets of other people. The third party has nothing to do with you spending the money carelessly, is my point. The third party is just a platform used to have people have access to your program to apply or go on a portal to easily have this program be accessible to the people you're supposed to be helping. So when you look at that, that still doesn't excuse you, because basically, if you want me to be honest and quite frankly, when they asked her what with this whole scandal, and she said, and they asked her this.
What are you hearing from investigators right now?
Well, I've been coming. I think that number might go up to 73 is what I'm hearing.
Okay. Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
Basically, she don't know. She know why, but she don't have no solid answer and no plan to fix it. It's just the same old response, right? And you peep that the councilman that they couldn't get a hold of, this guy, Jamal Osman, he just claims racist, they're hateful, bigotry, same playbook, right? Tug on your emotions. Anytime you corner these people with facts, the escape route is the race card. They run into the Victim Olympics. Pull it out, wave it around, and hope the conversation stops. But not this time. That's why this man is running rampant, because now he agreed to sit down with the news and he's nowhere to be found. And they even went to his house. And they went to the office where he works and he wasn't in there, supposedly, allegedly. So we're talking about welfare money. We're talking about pandemic relief. The same guardrails that were down when it came to them PPP loans, and then people got held accountable because they had fake businesses. And it could be, this could be controversial, but we just having a conversation. We can also say, if you want to be technical, since she's talking about, guardrails and, it being so new and the programs being so new, and it was during the pandemic, and help was trying to easily, help was trying to get help was trying to be given to citizens so quickly that guardrails could have been put down, which opened up loopholes for people to scam. It's still no damn excuse, because you should be overseeing it, because you are basically using taxpayer money. See, you don't have to give a shit when it's not your money. That's basically what she's saying. We didn't care about the fraud and abuse. We just wanted to say we helped you. So take it and shove it up your, you know what, and we don't care because it ain't our money. We don't gotta look at it. We don't gotta budget. We don't gotta look at the risk of scammers doing things such as scamming to get more than what they need and abusing the program, and let alone making sure that us as politicians, as public servants, operating the best of people, making sure the program don't get abused. They ain't care about none of that. They just said, oh, we did the program, we did it for a good cause. This is race, this is hate, because y'all committed fraud and y'all didn't look at the risk management to see, or pay attention to the audits from the whistleblowers that mentioned that it was brought to your attention back in, believe 2022, and y'all end up firing these people that actually did their job and telling y'all, look, we got $1 billion. This is fraud. We got fraudulent stuff going on. Monies are getting sent places that shouldn't be sent. And now y'all ain't got no excuse for, y'all ain't got no valid reason to why. It's just, oh, I heard some people getting indicted, and I think the guardrails was there weren't proper guardrails up, and the programs got up too fast for COVID. It could be controversially said that, oh, it could be the same thing for the vaccine, that it was dispersed too fast, trying to save lives, but it actually hurt lives. You can say that too, hypothetically, or reasonably. That's a reasonable statement to make as well. But we're not talking about controversial statements or anything that's for speculation. We're talking about something as a welfare fraud, which is being proven. $1 billion of welfare money, pandemic relief, taxpayer dollars. So, and it's being basically funneled through nonprofits in the Somali community to overseas terrorist groups. And the moment you question that, they call you racist. And that's how you know you're right over the target. That's the you got them moment. Because when people start yelling racism like this Jamal Osman guy, Um, yeah, it's as soon as they start calling you racist. As soon as you start asking questions, it means they have no defense, no facts to fall back on, just vibes and victimhood. That's all it is. But I want to show you guys another clip in regards to this matter. Check this out.
This is the first woman of color ever elected to represent her state in Congress, one of only 3 Muslim members of Congress serving right now. She was, I should also point out that in the last election, she was given that office by more than 75% of the people who voted. The president has attacked e-initiatives. He's cut refugee admissions while prioritizing South Afrikaners. He denies, of course, that some American citizens were arrested by ICE because of the color of their skin. The statistics would suggest otherwise. Where is this going? This is only day, I think it's 317 of his presidency.
Chris, I mean, we have to be honest. Trump's immigration policy is a white nationalist agenda. It's part of a white nationalist agenda. I know people get upset with that, but it's true. I think we need to be.
This is a Princeton University professor talking. And you mean to tell me he's so smart that he want to talk about race? Okay.
Very, very clear that the idea is to make America white again. This is why I began with that nationalist conservatism movement, right? Because there's a belief that social cohesion isn't possible if you have immigration from all of these different groups. Now, mind you, we're talking about American citizens for the most part in this instance, but there's this sense that the browning of America, that these demographic shifts have to be arrested. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is not so much how do we defend Ilhan Omar from Trump's ridiculous rhetoric, but why are we stomaching or tolerating this from the President of the United States? This is blatant racist language, Chris. How is it that this is tolerable? That the President of the United States can describe American citizens as garbage. If you call Americans deplorable, all hell breaks loose. But what is going on here? At the heart of it, I think, is this clear idea that America has to remain a white republic. And if it's not, then we are going to hell. And so that came out of the mouth, I think, that vision came out of the mouth of the President of the United States. And we have to refuse that. And if we don't, what does that say about the country?
The president didn't say that. That was a lot of enthusiasm. He was trying to sell you on bullshit. And my man was basically orchestrating. My man was basically being so enthusiastic that he was basically acting like he was on a book campaign to sell a book of the Victim Olympics of selling the whole race bait race card. Because what the president said was, you come from a hell such of a place, but then you come to America and you complain. But if America is so bad, then why come to another country? Go make your own country great. That's what Donald Trump said. And it doesn't take rocket science to fucking figure that out, because he's a professor from Princeton University and he can't even get that through his damn skull. But then you mean to tell me he said all of that but never acknowledged that the fraud was a lie, which is the whole point of this conversation, which is the whole point of why Trump is doing what he do anything, because the whole premise of his whole campaign when he became president, or when he was running to become president, which he is president now, was to get rid of fraud, waste, and abuse, which in turns lowers the taxation of American workers getting taxed so much from these programs that are basically funneling money for politicians to get rich, let alone doing illegal things such as not following protocol and funneling money to other countries that they are from originally to send it back home. And you're basically abusing America to enrich yourself, send your money back home. The politicians are basically using programs to favor a certain minority group so they get money on the back end, and that minority group that they're favoring makes up majority of their voter base. That's why they're catering to them, because they want to stay in power. That's basically what's happening. So this guy obviously is pro-Democrat, and he's so liberal that you can't change his mind. And you can tell he's a Democrat because his damn glasses is blue. Now he sat up here and he said all of this nonsense, but never spoke on the fact of nothing and just spoke of nothingness. You could be so smart but so dumb. And this is a professor. So just imagine how many people he teaching. Right? Just speak on facts if you're going to speak on it. Right? So, like I said, they yell racism. And it hurts America because now you're sitting here basically promoting division instead of unity. That's what gets on my nerves. Speak to the situation from the facts. If you can't substantiate or have facts that this is racist, then don't say it. Because what basis is he speaking on? It's baseless. So, when you look at this, right, and you see everything that's going on, it sounds like to me, this man is intellectually bankrupt. And this crackdown is not about race, it's just about accountability. If you do the crime, you do the time, like they say. They did the damn crime. You don't get to commit fraud and then funnel government money to shell companies and terrorist group and then hide behind a race car like a bulletproof vest, especially when we got indictments, charges, federal documents, and a mountain of receipts. But every time someone brings it up, the conversations get shut down with white nationalism, hate, bigotry. Like, bro, you are the only one basically infuriating and telling us on national TV on a mainstream media network such as MS Now, which is formerly known as MSNBC, spewing this type of rhetoric that's going to go seep into the minds of other people who can't think for themselves and then sit there and really take in this racism stuff. When are we going to get past the racism card? So that's just deflection he's doing. Been used too many times. It's expired because the moment we stop entertaining noise and look at the substance, the fraud is just undeniable is my point. But I want you guys to check out this last clip I want to show you guys in the matter.
Railing against Governor Tim Walz, and the House Oversight Committee, which has launched its own investigation into the fraud, is now requesting documents, records, and communications from both Walz and State Attorney General Keith Ellison after reports they and other state officials may have been warned and ignored those warnings, allowing this fraud to happen.
The state employees in Minnesota rang the bell, they blew the whistle that there was massive fraud, and yet Tim Walz and Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, apparently turned a blind eye to that for fear of political retaliation from the large voting bloc of Somalis.
Yeah, close to 80,000 Somalis.
Basically, their voter base is basically the majority of their voter base is Somali, and so they cater to a certain voter base to stay in office. Basically what I said.
Live in Minnesota. They have become a powerful voting bloc for Democrats, but there are now multiple federal investigations into this fraud. Folks close to those cases tell us that what we've seen so far may be just the tip of the iceberg.
Hey, watching that.
Recently released audio recordings reveal conversations that happened between the Attorney General and individuals who were later implicated and in some cases convicted in the Feeding Our Future scandal. In those recordings, the Attorney General...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of order.
Masons 124, paragraph 1, in debate, members must confine remarks to questions before the body and avoid personalities. The debate here is not any individual. It is the policy and the amendment.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Attorney General was asked in those recordings to use his authority to protect businesses under investigation for wrongdoing, and rather than distance himself or remain neutral to allow the legal process to unfold, he responded in those recordings, "Of course, I'm here to help."
Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, there was a point of order, and I didn't hear a ruling or any resolution of the point of order. Was there a resolution to it?
I'll remind the body that there was no ruling made by the Speaker as to the point of order that was just stated. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Attorney General in those recordings even urged the individuals, let's go fight these people. He was offered campaign contributions during that meeting, contributions that he later accepted. The release of those audio recordings raises questions about what's going on in the Attorney General's office that go directly to the need to pass the legislation that we had previously debated, House File 20. Although he has insisted that nothing came of the meeting, his office
Point of order, Mr.
blocks
Speaker.
disclosure of closed
State
investigative
your point
data.
of order.
Masons 124.
The A11 will help ensure that what happens behind closed doors in the Attorney General's office sees the light of day. We can protect people's privacy while shining a light on what the Attorney General's office is doing, who is influencing that office, whether it's those under a criminal investigation, nonprofits, corporations, or billionaires with political agendas, because Minnesotans have a right to know when their Attorney General's office is working with them. Minnesotans have a right to know whether the Attorney General is telling the truth, that nothing came of that meeting. That's why the A11 is so important.
I do want to ask you about the fraud scandal. I mean, because the president's comments seem at least in part fueled by, or he's talking about this fraud scandal that we mentioned earlier involving that charity called Feeding Our Future. The vast majority of these 70 defendants charged in the case were Somali. For perspective, those are nearly 80,000 Somalis in the state. How much, critics have said that state officials, including you and the governor, did not act fast enough or quickly enough to investigate charges of fraud against the Feeding Our Future and did little to flag their allegations to federal authorities. I know you said it was the federal government that didn't move fast enough. Is there something you wish you had done differently?
No, first of all, the Department of Education denied claims when questionable claims were made about these meals. My office went to court, explained that to the court. A judge actually found the department in contempt for denying claims. And we cooperated fully and worked well with the FBI. We're glad that we took.
Yeah, okay. Like I said, man. If that was the case, it still doesn't absolve. See, they like to move the goalposts. Oh, we went to court and basically the Department of Education got held accountable because we mentioned the claims and the judge said blah 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 that they were wrong. I'm glad we took them to court because they denied the claims in regards to the matter. When we brought it to their attention, you brought it to their attention, but you are the Attorney General of the you're the Attorney General of the state of Minneapolis. Like, you're like the top dog, like the top lawyer of that state. So you mean to tell me you couldn't get nothing implemented in regards of preventing this fraud in the first place when you're trying to blame the federal government, when all the federal government does is cut the checks and give it to, all they do is cut the checks, and the governor of the state actually is the one cashes it and actually allocate where the funds go within that state. So I don't know how stupid they think we are, but when you really look at it, when they say, oh, the money was handled too fast during COVID, oh, the Department of Education, we brought these claims up about flagging the fraud, and they were actually like, listen to this crap, man.
A judge actually found the department in contempt for denying claims.
They found the department in contempt for denying claims. Okay. So let's say you held the department. Let's go with what he said hypothetically. The Department of Education got held in contempt for denying claims, but through this Feeding Our Future, it's still a fraud scheme, bro. Under your watch as the top lawyer, the top chief, like law enforcement, you're the Attorney General of the state of Minneapolis, working alongside the governor to make sure y'all are in compliance while y'all allocate this money that was cut from y'all from the federal government. And all you could do is say, oh, the Department of Education, we mentioned it to them. We mentioned these claims, but they did nothing. So how is it our fault? That's what basically he's saying. It sounds so stupid, incompetent. So the same thing, like I said, with the whole Ilhan Ilmar that mentioned, oh, well, I think the programs got put up so fast and the guardrails wasn't properly put in place. Okay, well, if the money was handled too fast during COVID, your team, Congresswoman of Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General of Minnesota, y'all was in charge of approving it. And this ain't about immigration either. Cracking down on this means cracking down on the Democrat Party itself, because they're the ones who allowed it, who benefited from it, and who used this same community as both a voter base and a shield from criticism. And now there's the question about Tim Walz, about Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, who you just seen speak. Like, were they warned about this fraud and did they ignore it? Because if they knew and still let it happen, they still took that money. That's more than incompetence. It's corrupt, and they know it. And the math don't add up, right? Because I want to show you guys on my screen, in regards of it. If you really look at it, Somalians generate at least 500 million in income annually and pay about 67 million in state and local taxes. So when you look at this Minnesota Somalian population, poverty 58%, food stamps 42%, unemployed 40%, no high school education 41%, billions in fraud, waste, and abuse, right? And then you look at this Somalian Minnesotan community, right? The numbers don't add up. The math ain't mathing because the Somali community generates 500 million in income, right? And pays 67 million in state and local taxes, right? So if that's the case, okay, cool. But when the fraud is over $1 billion, how is 67 million gonna cover that? Right? Like, you ever owe your boy $1,000 and then you hand him a 5 and say we good? That's what the argument sounds like. Plus, when you break it all down per person, this 500 million divided by 86,000 Somali residents comes out to be like 5,800 per person. And compare that to the average Minnesotan bringing in 68,000 per year. Somali income is like 8.5% of that. And on the tax side, that's 67 million in taxes divided up is only $779 per Somali a person. Not even $1,000 a year in taxes. And y'all out here trying to tell us that makes up for the massive fraud? Or are we dumb, or you think we dumb? So the media is actually proving a point that they're trying to argue against. And when you stack that on top of the community's other stats, like I mentioned, with the poverty, 58% poverty, 42% on food stamps, 40% unemployed, and 41% without a high school diploma, and then you add billions in welfare fraud to the mix, you got to stop and say maybe the media should just sit that one out, because every time they try to spin this into something positive, they're actually exposing how deep the problem really is. This ain't about bigotry, it's about facts. And the facts ain't on their side, buddy. So what they need to do is acknowledge it, stop crying wolf, and clean it the hell up. Because the longer they refuse to take the loss, to take the L, the worse things get. And that's what happens now. That's what's happening now. And it's only get worse. And it's exposing everything wrong with how Democrats operate when they're unchecked. The story is fascinating because it's like a mirror reflecting their own failures, their corruption, and their willingness to let fraud slide for the sake of politics. And the second you call it out, that's when they lose it, because it threatens the power structure they built. And they know it. So let me know what y'all think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate. Catch you in the next one. Peace.